Hey guys, this is Joseph Lucero with Powerlifting Technique, and today we're going to talk about why aren't your biceps growing? So it's one of the more frustrating muscle groups to grow. For some of us, maybe it's not, but I feel like a lot of people who I talk to, they're always struggling on how to grow their biceps. And there's a few things you can do that will help them obviously grow more, but you might already be doing those things. In fact, you might be doing some of the right things, you just might not be ordering them correctly or doing them to the right intensity or phasing them out in your training correctly. So inside this video, by the end of it, you will know my top 3 tips on how to grow those biceps in ways that you can integrate it into your performance training today. So a little funny narrative to start the video today. I remember when I was a freshman in high school, and by then I could bench 275. I was inching my way to 300, but I remember my biology teacher telling me, "Hey Joseph, you got a big chest, but your arms are small. Kind of looks a little weird." And I remember hearing this, and even to this day, I still talk about this story because it bothered me so much. It bothered me that proportionally I looked incorrect, and I would wear shirts and I would feel it really tight in my chest, but very loose in my arms. It was concerning. I felt, why are my biceps not growing? And one of the first things I want to note in this video is that if you're a powerlifter, a lot of times we don't focus a lot on our bicep training. I know that when I was younger and I was trained by certain coaches, I remember biceps were like an afterthought. But for a lot of us, we want to have big biceps. We want to have big arms. We want to claim our dominance amongst our peers by having a larger anatomy, especially in the arm area. So, what are we doing wrong? What are some things that we can do to fix this problem in order to be more successful? I've coached lots and lots of athletes. Right now, I work with a lot of people one-on-one online. I work with some people in person. And with powerlifting, biceps aren't really the most dominant part of training. But if you ask my clients, I think a lot of them do see success with their biceps and growth because we do a few certain things to help them grow their biceps without having to distract their training from becoming better powerlifters or strongmen. So my 3 tips, I'm going to go in a different order. I'm going to go from number 3 to number 2 to number 1. The third most important thing I would say needs to happen with your bicep training is you need to prioritize different grips. So a lot of people think when they do bicep training, it's got to be an underhand grip. So that is a supinated grip, underhand. And when you do the underhand grip, it trains your biceps a little differently than in a neutral overhand grip. So think about it like this. Put your hand on your bicep right now, do the underhand grip, and then slowly turn to an overhand grip. And you will feel that bicep getting a lot longer because of how the muscle anatomy works in your arms. You have 2 bones in the forearm, and when they turn into a pronated position, those forearm bones almost want to twist and cross over. And where your muscles insert, the more you rotate, the longer that bicep gets. And if you train your biceps in a supinated, neutral, and pronated position, you're working different parts of the muscle fibers to help you grow it fully. So in an underhand position to neutral to overhand, you're working potentially more of the short head, the long head, the brachioradialis, or the brachialis muscle, which is underneath the bicep. So underhand training is good, but if you go neutral grip, you're a lot stronger in the neutral grip position. And what you can think about in that situation is that with a neutral grip, if you can lift more weight, that means you overload the muscle more to make it stronger, which hence will also make it thicker. And then in an overhand grip, you can really prioritize the forearm muscle to help give that illusion of having bigger arms. Now, underhand, like I said, it's going to work the bicep. Neutral grip, bicep, the brachioradialis. So this little bump right here, it's going to train that. And then underneath your bicep, deep underneath that bicep, is the brachialis muscle. And the brachialis muscle is actually the strongest flexor of the elbow joint. And what's interesting is that brachialis muscle underneath the bicep, if you train that neutral grip position, that brachialis is going to get bigger. It's going to push those biceps up to make those engorged meat mountains you see when people like bodybuilders will flex at their own shows and competitions. So if you're going into your arm day doing just a bunch of underhand stuff, you need to make sure that you also prioritize the neutral grip and the overhand position as well to get a full, more dense bicep anatomy than your peers. So I would definitely recommend when you do bicep training, do underhand for a few sets, neutral grip for a few sets, and then overhand for a few sets. Or you can do it like this too. Maybe you focus a lot of your workout underhand, a little bit neutral and overhand, and then the next time you do arm training, a lot of neutral grip, and then a little bit pronated and supinated. You can kind of mix it up and see what works best for you. So now that leads me into the number 2 most important thing you should think about with bicep day is using multi-joint compound movements. So when you do biceps, a lot of people think of single joint exercises, bicep curls, preacher curls, hammer curls, etc. But the problem is that single joint movements, you're just using a single muscle. So biceps. But if you do multi-joint movements, which most likely with a biceps going to be like a pulling motion, you're getting more muscles involved. You can lift more weight. You can overload the muscle a lot more. Some people who watch this video are going to say, oh, well, if I do bent rows, that's not going to make my biceps grow. Well, that's false. It's going to make the biceps grow. But let's talk about grip. Back to the third most important thing I talked about. If you do bent row, a lot of people are going to do an overhand grip. Now, what happens is with the overhand grip, that's not prioritizing that bicep muscle as much. Now, when you go neutral or underhand, like let's say if you went underhand bent rows, you would feel a lot of that in your biceps. So that's going to actually put a little bit more muscle recruitment in the bicep in this grip versus the overhand grip. So that's another important thing you got to think about too, is using compound movements, but with certain grips as well. So one of my most favorite bicep exercises to use, in fact, is my favorite. I think it's the most top bicep building exercise of all time. It's chin up. So chin up, underhand, you're pulling down, and I know it's going to hit your back, you hit your rear delts, but because of the grip, it's going to put a lot more muscular recruitment in the biceps. I can chin up a lot more weight this way than a bicep curl this way. So the more muscle I'm using here, the more I can lift, the biceps can be challenged more and grow more and develop more. So if you can't do chin ups, maybe you do the lat pull down bar, but underhand instead. And if that hurts too much going overhead, maybe you go a seated cable underhand pull like this. Whatever you have to do, you should use multi-joint movements in your training to make sure that you can overload the bicep much more than you would normally. That's another tactic that I really enjoy to work with people. And then for my number one tip for building biceps is making sure you have correct exercise order. So let's go back from the top. Grip is number 3. Multi-joint movements is number 2. Exercise order is the first most important. Because here's the problem. A lot of people go into arm day and they just do a bunch of single joint movements and they're not really challenging their body. Think about it like this. Let's say you go into the gym and you do bicep curls for 10 reps or barbell squats for 10 reps. Which one's more exhausting? It's the squats, because you're using multi-joint compound movements, a lot more muscle. It's a lot more fatiguing metabolically. Now, I'm not saying you have to squat before you curl, but I would argue that if someone went into a workout and did legs like squats and deadlifts and then did bicep curls, I think they're much more metabolically exhausting, so that when they get to the bicep part, they're so tired that they're actually going to thrive doing bicep movements at the end, because that'll grow the biceps more than someone who just does a pure arm day workout of itself. So if I had a study where one group did barbell squats and then bicep curls, and then I had another group that just did bicep curls, I bet you the people who squat first and then bicep curl are going to have much more bigger biceps, because they're much more metabolically exhausted, which is the stimulus for fatigue that'll grow the muscle more. I think they're going to have much more success because they're doing much more exhaustive workouts before, and then they're doing their single joint stuff at the end. If you think about your next arm day, do not just do single joint movements. Do multi-joint movements, those compound movements. Use different grips, but use the big movements first and then the single joint movements at the end. So let's say I had 3 exercises right now to choose from. I had chin-ups, preacher curls, and then cable hammer curls. I would, start off with the chin-ups, and then I would do the hammer curls, and I think I said preacher curls. I would do preacher curls at the end because it's a machine movement. It's much more simple, and now I can focus much more on effort. I have to focus on technique, coordination, etc. So exercise order has a huge influence on your arm day as well. So don't go into the gym next time doing just a bunch of single joint, silly movements, machines, and then dumbbells, etc. You have to have a flow. Prioritize your grip. Make sure every workout you do some underhand, neutral, or pronated grip. Start with your multi-joint compound movements, then into the isolation movements. And when you go into isolation and try to fatigue it the most, choose machines at the end, because there's less coordination, less thinking, and you can focus a ton more on effort at that point too. So again, my name is Joseph Lucero. I'm with Powerlifting Technique. We kind of ran through the video pretty quick, but we just want to cover the main details. We don't want to sit here and make you go through a snooze fest for 20 minutes trying to go over research topics when that's not stuff you're interested in. You're interested in quick answers, quick direction, and some more applicable approach through simpler logic. If you have a comment or if you have something you want to talk about, leave it in the comments below. Share the video, like the video, subscribe. Let us know what you think, because some of the comments below might be the next topic that we do in our next video. So I hope you like the video and you check us out at powerliftingtechnique.com.